Hey, I'm Brian Goulet of the Goulet Pen Company and Ink Nouveau, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the Goulet Loupe. I know if you look at how it's spelled, it looks like it's Goulet Loupe, but no, it's pronounced Loupe, and it's a very handy tool when you're inspecting the nib of your fountain pen. So the point of this video is to show you its features and how to best utilize it when you're trying to tune your nib. Let's do it. So what is a loupe and why do you need it? Well, a loupe is essentially a small magnifying glass. And typically when you're dealing with fountain pens, you want to have a loupe that's between 10 and 20x power. That allows you to see, 10 to 20 times what your eye can normally see. The Goulet Loupe is a 15x, so it'll get you about 15 times magnification of what you can see with your naked eye. And the whole point of having the loupe in terms of a fountain pen use is to be able to inspect the nib to make sure that the tines of the nib are aligned properly so that you get a smooth writing experience. All fountain pen nibs have tines and the ink flows in between those tines. And if they're not properly aligned, then it's going to feel scratchy on the page, or it may affect the flow of the ink in your pen. So using a loupe to inspect it will allow you to make sure that your pen is operating as it should. So this is the Goulet Loupe, and before I get into all of its features, I know that people that are really into loupes are probably going to turn their noses up a little bit at this loupe because it is kind of a bargain loupe. I wanted something low price, I wanted something affordable so that fountain pen users of all walks of life could afford a loupe, because I believe it's such a utilitarian item for inspecting your fountain pens. You don't have to have the highest quality loupe out there because they can get pretty darn expensive. I felt that this one was a great one, a great value one for what it has. So let me go over all the features here for the loupe that I felt was good enough to put my name on it. It's a 15 power loupe, so you can get pretty decent magnification. Everything as good as what you'll need for a fountain pen anyway. It has a built-in dual LED, which is helpful when you're inspecting something in less than ideal lighting conditions. It does not come with batteries. We chose not to include batteries with it just because we didn't want to drive up the cost, and shipping batteries, especially internationally, gets a little tough. But it takes 3 AAAs, so AAA batteries are pretty easy to come by. But even still, you don't have to have the LEDs. You can use this thing just fine with proper lighting. But one of the biggest reasons why I really like this loupe, aside from the good value, and I believe it's pretty nice, it's comfortable to hold, it's large enough for a guy like me with huge hands to be able to hold it comfortably, but it has a really broad depth of field. And what I mean by that is it's very forgiving when you're actually looking into it to actually be able to see what in the world is going on. I've used some loupes before that are much smaller in size, and so they have a very, very narrow viewing field. So when I'm holding it like this is kind of a side view when you're holding it. If you're moving it forward and back, that's going to change the focus. This loupe will be more forgiving in terms of how much you move it and when you'll still be able to see it. I've used some where it's literally like a millimeter or 2 in movement will get the nib out of focus, and that gets really hard to use, and especially if your eyesight's not the best, it can be kind of frustrating. So I thought that this loupe specifically would be great for a broad range of users, of skilled users, to be able to actually benefit from the magnification. Now when it comes to actually holding the loupe, this isn't something I can show you very easily just with my hands because it involves my whole body. But basically I'm going to hold the loupe as if I'm holding a pen in my hand, just like this. I have a 3-finger pen hold. If you got a 4-finger, that's okay too. But the key is to kind of have your pinky loose and have your thumb on top. What I like to do is I like to take my thumb and kind of rest it on the bridge of my nose, and that's going to give me a nice anchor point for for keeping the loop still as I'm looking through it, because it is a high power magnification, and if you have it moving around a lot, it's going to be hard to keep the nib in focus as you're trying to adjust it. So keeping your thumb on your nose kind of plants it and gives it a nice resting point. And then likewise, when you're holding your pen in your other hand, if you hold out your pinky on the hand that's holding the loop, you can use that to rest it on the pen and kind of give you another anchor point. And this allows you to be able to kind of adjust the loop in and out with your fingers and then adjust the pen in and out while still giving you a bit of stability. Otherwise, you're kind of holding everything freehand, and while you can still do it that way, it does make it a little harder because your arms are making all these micro adjustments and stuff. But if you're holding it like this, then that allows you to really kind of dial in and see what's going on without everything moving around too much. You're going to look pretty strange, and your friends might point and laugh at you, but it's going to get the job done pretty well. So this is going to be a little bit awkward for me to try to show you because I'm doing it through a camera, not through my own eye. But basically, when you're holding the loop in your hand, it's going to be somewhere like this, you know, near your face, and you're going to hold the pen like this with the nib pointed kind of towards your eye, right? So you're going to have to play a little bit as far as how close the loop needs to be to your eye and how far and close the pen needs to be to the loop. And so it will be a little bit of a dance to try and figure out the right place. And of course I've got my camera's autofocus in here that's throwing things off as well. But once I get it dialed in, there we go. That's about what you can expect right there. And this is going to be the view that you want when you're inspecting your pen. Now you can see if I take the loop away, that's what you'd be looking at otherwise. It's kind of hard to see what's going on here at the tip of the nib when you don't have a loop. So really, having the loop in there will allow you to see so much more detail. In fact, maybe too much detail. If you go inspecting other parts of your pen, you may find things that you may not want to see that you would otherwise be ignorant about. So, you know, be careful what you inspect because sometimes, you know, things are not so pretty under magnification. But anyway, as far as inspecting the nib, it's going to allow you really to check the alignment of the tines. And that's what it's for. If you're not familiar with pen terminology, this metal part here is called the tip, or the nib. This ball on the end, this is the tip of the nib. And then the two sides are called the tines. And that line down the middle, that is the slit. That is a line that's cut down through the nib, and that's where the ink actually flows. So in order to have the pen writing properly, you need to make sure that these tines are aligned. I'm going to show you one that is not properly aligned, just for your reference. Now if you're looking at that one, it's very obvious that one of those tines, the one on the right, is much lower than the one on the left. And what that's going to mean for you when you write is that you're going to feel some drag or maybe a scratchy feeling going from a left to right direction because this lower tine is going to be dragging on the page. This is a great instance of when you would want to actually make an adjustment to this tine to get it working properly. I would say the vast majority of fountain pens that feel scratchy is a simple alignment issue, just like this. It doesn't require any nib smoothing or modification of any kind. Really, all you got to do is get those aligned properly, and then it's going to write really smooth. Now, this is going to be hard for me to do with the loop, but essentially, the way that you're going to do it is you don't really need any special tools. So what you want to do is just kind of take your fingers and the tine that's too low, you just want to take and push it up. You want to over flex it just a little bit. And with your naked eye, you can get a pretty good idea of when they're aligned. But then you want to check back with your loop and make sure that you actually got it. And I actually didn't do too bad on that one. I can probably go a little bit higher. So I want to bend up just a little bit more. You don't want to try to bend any down because especially when you've got the feed in the way, it's easy to bend it in the wrong way. But bending it up a little bit, granted you don't want to go too nuts with it, but bending it up a little bit, that will pretty much get you where you want to go. And then once everything looks good to you, See, that looks pretty good now. Then you can break out a pad of paper and actually see, you know, how it writes, and that should feel pretty smooth. If it doesn't feel smooth after everything looking aligned, then it might be time to actually go towards a nib smoothing like micromesh or mylar. That's really up to you, but the vast majority of scratchy problems will be fixed just by aligning it like I did there. If you've got any other questions about how to use a loupe or anything else related to your fountain pen, just leave me a comment on YouTube or on Ink Nouveau. And you can always hit me up on Twitter and Facebook too. Thanks so much for spending time with me, and right on.